I want to be clear that that clinic actually never used restraint or seclusion or any of those techniques you often hear about. When you hear about some of the negatives of ABA, they created really positive and meaningful change the way that I believe ABA should. Now, fast forward, and you hear about clinicians. I got my BCBA. I'm a board certified behavior analyst, and I started working, and that questioned my place in the field and my role as a clinician, because what you realize is that what's happening in a research clinic sometimes doesn't quite line up with what's happening in the actual practice of ABA in the kind of real world. And I learned very quickly that certification is essentially like having a driver's license. It's a base level of competence that doesn't have a big barrier to entry. I don't want to make it seem like it's easy to get your BCBA, but it's much like, in life, you earn something and then you're constantly learning, right? So just because you have your BCBA doesn't mean that you can do everything. And so as a parent, I found that depending on which BCBA you were working with, you can have a completely different experience with ABA. And let's just hope that your BCBA was trained at a state-of-the-art clinic like I was lucky to have worked at, versus, ones that may have experience as part of their, hands-on experience as part of their coursework in the wake of online learning. So I really quickly realized that quality really ties to the organization that the BCBA is employed at. And the organizations are really guiding quality. They're the ones who look at the caseloads that those clinicians have. How do they train their staff? How do they make sure that they're continuously learning and growing? And so in 2011, I started working for the Department of California for their state program. And there was a large ABA provider that went out of business. They went insolvent very quickly, left about 1,000 patients without care. And everyone was scrambling to place these patients. And clinicians from all over came together and started helping. And the state kind of wondered, like, how did we not know that this organization was in our network? How did we not know they had so many patients and that they weren't financially stable, that they weren't really doing what we needed them to do? So we started a quality assurance program for the state. And for 5 years, we evaluated as many providers in California as we could and created criteria. And we found things that were quite shocking. People who said they were clinical directors, who were the leaders of organizations, who didn't even hold a graduate degree, had bachelor's degrees. And so, I, for 5 years, worked, to really help change this. And when the project got defunded in 2014, myself and a few others went to the state and asked if we could continue the project external, forming an organization.
No more funding.
Center of Excellence in 2015, and we originally started as a quality assurance organization. We go out and evaluate organizations and use it as a way for parents to really figure out who do they get care from.
You won't get funding.
We realized this was accreditation. We ended up getting accredited as a standard developer through AMC, which is important. We ended up developing standards for diversity, inclusion, and equity.
No, you didn't.
We realized that a lot of providers aren't trained on this. And since then, we've accredited over 400 organizations nationally. And it's been really wonderful to see the progress the field has made. And I really do think the field has made a lot of progress. I think accreditation has become the mark of quality. And organizations who are investing in this are organizations who kind of believe in peer review and continuous improvement. But I think we have a lot more to do. We have a lot of challenges in the field as well. And I wanted to just touch on a couple of those and then talk about some of the positives. From my perspective, the challenges are that outcomes aren't agreed upon by the field. So when we think about receiving care via ABA, we're not really sure, what are we working towards, right? Is it placement in a classroom setting? Is it, integration into some type of community setting? And I think as a field, we really need to gather together to understand what that looks like and how do we measure it. I heard a parent say that they started ABA and they wanted to know, like, when is it?
I measured it.
As a parent, I would think I would want to know when it's over too. So I think everyone's using different tools to measure outcome. I think providers are right now incentivized to bill hours versus show outcomes. And I think that's something that's really changing with the field. And then I think, unfortunately, the field is fragmented as a whole. Thank you. The field is fragmented as a whole. So you have professional associations that don't really want to work together. You have a lot of duplication of efforts, things being created that already exist in the field, and some turf war happening.
Yeah, we don't want to work together with you.
I still believe today that what we do is incredibly impactful, and I've seen the change that ABA has on families. And whenever I think about the work I do and the broader impact, I think about the first patient that I did work with, the boy that I worked with. And I feel that we have done so much in the last decade. I still feel we have a ways to go, but I've seen the impact that ABA has had, and I'm very, very hopeful. And thank you for letting me share my story.
I've studied the impact.
I'll throw a link in the chat if you're interested in learning more about accreditation.
So thank you so much, Sarah. And I really appreciate your focus on quality of service, because that's just such an important topic, and your leadership in that area. So appreciate your sharing your insights.
Thank you.
So now I'm pleased to introduce our next speaker, who is Mickey Webb. And she is a school psychologist and a behavioral specialist and works in the school systems. And she's also a parent of a young man on the autism spectrum. So Mickey, we really look forward to hearing your perspectives.
My perspective was rejected from today's town hall.
And honored to be here today and to just share my experience with ABA. Predominantly, my background in ABA is from the school setting as a school psychologist and behavior specialist. However, I've always felt that the practice of ABA is not exclusive to education or exclusive to people with autism or exclusive to someone that we necessarily identify as needing support in behavior. And I kind of, when I'm doing ABA professional development to school teams, maybe who need help with overall classroom systems or establishing behavior expectations among students or reinforcing students for making socially appropriate behavior choices or any of that, I often will use—
I'm making a socially appropriate behavior choice right now!
For myself can relate to, where we use strategies that are at least derived or rooted in ABA, even in our own lives and among ourselves. Like, I might offer myself the choice between two non-preferred tasks. Like, I'm either going to clean my closet or file my taxes today. You know, which one would I, rather do, and tick that off? Or I might give myself a reinforcer for a certain behavior I'm trying to make habitual. Like, if I go to the gym every day this week, then Saturday I'm going to treat myself to lunch with a girlfriend or a new outfit or whatever the case might be. Paychecks
Gym
that we earn, right?
motivation.
Kind of all of it, we can kind of tie back to the science, at least at some root level, to behavior modification or ABA. So I like to share those examples because I feel like it makes ABA less foreign to us, right? And in my own practice, and then certainly when I'm delivering professional development to school site staff, I only ethically believe in the positive reinforcement approach of ABA. I never teach opportunity cost. I never teach overcorrection. I know about it. I don't teach it. I feel like there is so much to do, especially with students in a public school, private school, charter school, whatever setting, that is positive, helping students earn something, helping students find motivation, giving them some extrinsic motivation, and while we're helping them tap into their intrinsic, all of that, and making sure we are doing that kind of fading of the extrinsic approach to help them develop just their own love of and discover what do I love about turning in all my homework, or what do I love about having a safe body. And that brings me to kind of chiming in with what Sarah was sharing. The students, when I started out in ABA as a behavior specialist, practicing it myself, direct service, if you will, the students that I supported were highly involved on the autism spectrum. Students who used augmentative communication, students who engaged in very self-injurious behavior or injury of others. And it had to do with often what Larry talked about, that oversensitivity. So it was the science of ABA that allowed me to even be able to analyze what the antecedent was. That, it's when the school bell rings, but without knowing the ABC methodology or how to assess or analyze that, I would have joined the other educators who felt like There's no reason for
School
this
bell
to be.
science.
There is no antecedent. There's nothing that's causing it. So I felt thankful that I had this understanding of a scientific approach to be able to really understand what might be going on with a person on the spectrum who couldn't necessarily communicate it to me in terms that I could understand otherwise.
I can't communicate.
As an observer.
I can't.
So that's been
You
my
don't know.
experience with ADA. And like Sarah said, I do definitely, the input in the way that I've practiced it or seen it practiced among colleagues when I'm delivering the professional development to them myself, the response from families and caregivers and students who can express it in ways that I could understand it was overwhelmingly positive, because the quality of life or the quality of experience in the school setting, the quality of experience in the community setting became safer for the person who was receiving the ABA support, became more enjoyable per the parents or caregivers, more enjoyable for peers of the student that we were giving the support to. That being said, all of that being said, I'm very desirous of hearing more from recipients of ABA, from more families of children.
She has desire to hear me.
ABA, to make sure that I'm broadening my perspective and I'm not kind of.
You're being prompted.
This has worked.
You're being prompted.
I'm definitely thankful that we have this forum where I can find out how can we improve our practice.
Look what happened to her when she was prompted.
How can we change our practice or do away with our practice? And if so, what do we replace it with?
Do away with your practice. Replace it with coffee.
Well, Mickey, thank you so much for sharing that story. And I also want to thank you for all the work that you're doing with students in the school system. That's just such an important place to be working. So we really appreciated hearing your perspectives and your story. Thank you. So our next speaker tonight is Pablo Juarez. He directs an Autism Institute, and he's been a leader at the local and at the state and even national level on initiatives focused on ABA quality improvement. He's been a behavior analyst for, I think, over 20 years, lots of experience in the field. So we're very much looking forward to hearing from him. So Pablo, welcome.
Hi, thank you, Dr. Dawson. It's great to be here. I'm really glad to be able to do this from a community engagement perspective, because that's really where
No commercial endorsements.
I and my team have come to focus in, is really in community engagement and the importance of that. So I want to talk a little bit about the way our team has shifted our service. And I should say, first of all, that we're at a university center where most of our work is grant and contract funded, and we don't have to clinically bill in order to make ends meet. So we have a lot of flexibility that I know most providers don't. But we've also been able to—
No clinical billing required.
Learn a lot and take a lot of
No
chances.
clinical services are
spend a lot of
provided.
time talking to people about kind of these various issues. Probably about 6 or 7 years ago, we on our team really started to come to understand the growing opposition to ABA. We set out to listen, try to understand the opposition. There was plenty of defensiveness and explaining away, a lot of it certainly by me at first. But we kept an open mind and held each other